It's something that'll change the world and human life as we know it.
He knows. He's seen the light.
When Monty talks, it's painful.
Monty, you have been so instrumental in kind of pointing me in the right direction.
It was about looking at your character defects in spirituality.
It's the integration of clinical practices with the 12 steps.
It's an absolute pleasure. He certainly knows a lot of people. He's got a lot of energy. And sometimes when you don't have so much energy, he picks you up and carries you.
Having the Monty man there certainly helps.
This is one of the places that is about the business of the solution.
The views expressed on this special broadcast of the Take 12 radio show do not necessarily reflect those of KHLT Recovery Broadcasting or its affiliates. KHLT is not affiliated with any particular 12-step fellowship.
Now here's that guy who's getting less popular minute by minute. Your host, the Multi-Man.
That's right. Welcome aboard, one and all. Welcome, family, to another episode of the Take 12 Recovery radio show, broadcasting to you and for you from the studios of KHLT Recovery Broadcasting. Today on the show, we have been promoting this show. We are excited about this show, and we are so pleased that you have tuned in. Remember, you can download this show, make copies of it. You have our permission to do that. Today on the show, in the studio, is CADC Level 2 Dave Fleming. Hey, Dave.
What's up?
What's happening?
Happening.
And our recovery coach friend over there, Derek Ader, is here.
Good morning.
Good morning, Derek.
Derek's in the house.
And on the phone with me right now is our good friend, Dr. Alan Berger, Ph.D. Dr. Berger, how the heck are you?
Well, it's good. I'm great, Monty, and it's just great being here with you and once again connect with you, man. I still have so many great memories about the work we've done together in the past and the journey we took people through about emotional sobriety.
Yeah, me too. It is lots of fun memories with that. And so, folks, yes. For those of you who don't know, let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Berger. Alan Berger, Ph.D., has over 5 decades of clinical experience and is an internationally recognized expert on the science of recovery and is credited with integrating the concepts of modern psychotherapy with 12-step recovery. He is considered by most to be the leading authority on emotional sobriety. He is a Take 12 Recovery radio contributor and co-host of Step by Step Toward Emotional Sobriety, a 12-step radio Take 12 radio recovery workshop that you can find right here, by the way, folks. If you visit us at take12radio.com and click on Recovery Workshop, there you'll find Step by Step Toward Emotional Sobriety with Dr. Alan Berger. And he is with us today to talk about his brand new book, 12 Essential Insights for Emotional Sobriety, Getting Your Recovery Unstuck. And Dr. Berger, one of the things I want to talk about in this show, and we'll get to it here in a little bit, though, is a gentleman by the name of Philip in Chapter 7. So I just want to let you know, I want to touch on Philip at some point. But Dr. Berger, what do you mean by getting your recovery unstuck?
Well, it's an experience that a lot of people have that have been in the program for a while. And I used to think that this was something that was more relevant for people that have been around for a while. But Monty, the truth is that people get stuck with what we're going to talk about very early on in the recovery as well. A good friend of mine, he's not a doctor, his name is Fred Holmquist. I call him a doctor because he's like the doctor of the 12 steps. Fred understands the 12 steps like no one else. And he talked about a concept that made so much sense to me. He called it sober suffering. And the way that he talked about it is the way that Ernie Larson talked about it, is that a lot of people have taken the first half of step 1. They get that they are powerless over their alcohol or their other drugs that they were using. But the unmanageability part of it, right, that our lives have become unmanageable, a lot of people think that just applies to my life was unmanageable when I was drinking or using. The truth of it is we find out that our lives are just unmanageable, period. It had nothing to do. It maybe got worse and more exacerbated with the drinking and using, but there's a lot of things, a lot of beliefs that we hold that make our life unmanageable and then create what Fred coined the term as the sober suffering. I think what gets us stuck is that we develop an attitude that I've called the I'm okay if attitude. Well, I'm okay if, when I was in the third grade, Susie Valinsky liked me. If Susie Valinsky didn't like me, then my life was terrible, Monty. And that I'm okay if just didn't happen when I was young and immature. That I'm okay if followed me into adulthood. So now I'm okay if I get the job. I'm okay if you accept me. I'm okay if this. I'm okay if that. And now my well-being was completely dependent on the people and circumstances that surrounded me.
Yeah, and that's what you called emotional dependency, right?
That's right. That's my emotional dependency. And so now, if I'm dependent on those things, I have to try to control all of those so that things happen the way I want them to happen, the way I think they're supposed to happen, or the way I think they should happen. So it turns me into a control freak. Not yet. I turn myself into a control freak, trying to control people, places, and things.
Your work with emotional sobriety, I mean, it is very well known now, and you have several books out. One of which is required reading at the Adult and Teen Challenge Center where I work. 12 Stupid Things That Mess Up Recovery. The two gentlemen sitting in my studio have read both those books. In fact, Derek, this was required reading when you were a student there, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it touches on some of this, right?
Yes,
but Dr. Berger, you've done so much work in this area and your videos and CDs and so forth. What inspired you to even go deeper with this book, 12 Essential Insights for Emotional Sobriety?
Well, I'd say for the last 30 years of my career, I've been really a student of this emotional sobriety. Starting with, going back over and unpacking Bill's letter, which you and I did on Step by Step, towards emotional sobriety. And then continuing on with it in terms of now relating the ideas, the concepts, the philosophy, if you will, of emotional sobriety to all these different approaches to psychotherapy. And what I saw was that Bill really captured something that was so powerful that it shows up in all different other kinds of work that people do to heal people. So he really captured an essence, if you will, that is so powerful that it changes people's lives. So as I've been digging into it over the 30 years, I realized, there's kind of an unfolding that takes place when we start to develop emotional sobriety in our life. And so let me just mention what the first insight is, right?
Yeah.
The first insight is waking up to our sleepwalking. Is that we don't realize is that we are sleepwalking, dreaming that we're awake. This is the way that this philosopher Gurdjieff called it. And what it means is we've got all of these attitudes and behaviors and beliefs that we've just accepted as our reality. And we don't realize is that this is one possibility in terms of a consciousness. There are other possibilities. Well, let me give you a great example of this on how our consciousness can change. So Piaget, who was a developmental psychologist, looked at the ways that children's cognitive development unfolded, right? So he tells a great story. This mom's got a 4-year-old, and she's got a 15-year-old. And they both come home from school. And she brings out some cookies. She bakes some chocolate chip cookies. She's got 2 cookies on the plate for the 4-year-old, and she's got 4 cookies on the plate for the teenager, right? Well, the 4-year-old, just like any good 4-year-old, throws a fit. Why do I only get 2 cookies, Mom? Why does my brother get 4 cookies? I want 4 cookies. And she tries to explain. He's older. He needs more calories. She tries to be rational. None of that soothes the desire to have 4 cookies. So out of frustration, she picks up a butter knife, comes over to his plate, and cuts his 2 cookies in half. So he now has 4. The little boy looks up at Mom and says, "You are the best mommy in the world. Thanks, Mom. Now I have 4 cookies."
Wow, that's great.
In a 4-year-old's consciousness,
right?
He was looking at the quantity, right?
Right.
He wasn't looking at the volume, the substance. Obviously, in his 4 cookies, there was half the amount of cookie dough in his brother's. But he couldn't understand that. That takes a cognitive development that he didn't have yet. So the way that he was looking at the world was the way the world is. But it doesn't mean that that's the way the world really is.
You know, okay, so I'm thinking about now. Dr. Rob Kelly does a show with us. He's known as the Addiction Doctor. He does a show with us on the 4th Monday of the month, and something he said made me think of you. He said that alcoholics, you know, we think differently, and so he was explaining that when he was a little kid, him and his cousin are jumping up and down on the bed. And his aunt comes in and says, "Hey, you guys, you're going to break the bed. You need to get down off that bed." And his cousin, that's what she hears. But what he hears is, "What are you doing jumping on the bed, you idiot?" Do we as people that are in recovery, do alcoholics and addicts, do we hear things differently?
Yeah, well, we do. We hear things depending on the level of our consciousness, the level of our emotional maturity. So let me give you an example. You know, one of the things I talk about, you know, you mentioned this emotional dependency.
Yeah.
So at a low level of differentiation, and I'll define differentiation in a minute.
Oh,
but
yes, I love
think
that.
of it as emotional maturity for a minute. So if I'm emotionally immature, then what I look at, when I'm in a relationship with someone and they're behaving a certain way. Let's say, well, I'll give you a great example. I'm working with this one couple right now. Especially, I'm working more with his partner than with him. She recently experienced a loss that someone that she dated and was in love with a long time ago died in a car accident, and she's in a lot of grief. Well, what his reaction to this is he takes it personally. Obviously, you don't love me, you still love him. So in his mind, it's a black and white thing. It's an absolute thing. You love one person, you can't love someone else. So he's taking her reaction very personally. He's making it about him.
Yeah.
And see, this is one of the things that causes us a lot of suffering in recovery, is we take things so personally. So we make it all about us. Now, doesn't that sound interesting, right? Because Bill said what? That self-centeredness, self will run riot, was the root of our
problems, yeah.
Well, that's what low differentiation is. Low differentiation means I look at things and I make everything about me. Now, if his consciousness and his maturity was higher, he would look at her grief and he wouldn't take that personally. He would see it just means that he had a very strong attachment to this person in her life. And he wouldn't take it personally, and he'd be able to be there and give her emotional support. But now all he can do is make her feel bad about feeling the way she's feeling, because she shouldn't feel that way according to him.
So she in his perception has knocked him off his emotional center of gravity, right?
You got listen to you, man. You're using those terms that we talked about. That's exactly right, Monty. That's exactly what's happening.
Can you explain differentiation? I mean, I love the way you put it when you talk about the stem cell thing, in the eye. You know what I'm talking about?
Right. Oh, yes. Yeah. Well, listen, the fellow who really brought that whole concept into the field of psychiatry and psychology was Dr. Murray Bowen. And he was what we would call today an evolutionary-based psychiatrist. So he didn't think like Freud thought about the libido and sex drives. And what he said is, I want to look at all the species on our planet and see what forces are operating in them and see how those show up in human beings. And then maybe we can understand ourselves a little bit better. And so what he looked at was, how well does a person become differentiated in their family? So he used the concept from biology. So an undifferentiated cell in biology is a cell that has not yet developed a specific function in a person's body. Now, if it's a stem cell, it never will, because it doesn't have the genetic program to be something. It just is neutral. It's like a blank board, a chalkboard,
right?
A tabula rasa, and you can just, paint or write anything you want on that blank screen. Other cells in our body have a genetic code, a DNA, we really need to call it, that then determines what that cell is going to be in our body. When that cell starts out, it's undifferentiated before the DNA releases all of its messages, and now the cell starts to turn on certain genes, turn off other genes. So let's say that cell is going to be a part of your eye. It's going to make an eye. Well, if I move that cell early on before it has become a specific cell that's going to create an eye, and I move it to the cheek, well, it will take all of the information from the DNA in the cells around it in its microenvironment, and it will change its basic nature to now be part of the cheek. If I move that cell after it's differentiated to the cheek, you'll grow a third eye because it's not going to be influenced. So he says, you know what? I think that happens to people. When people are differentiated, they're not overly influenced by what everybody else is thinking. When they're undifferentiated, then they're very much influenced by what other people are feeling and doing.
Yeah, that makes sense. Does that make sense to you guys?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
the more differentiated I am, the less I take things personally.
Right. And I love what you say. If you want to be personal, stop taking things so personally.
You got it.
Yeah.
You remembered a lot from our show.
Oh, yeah. Well, brother, you can ask these guys.
He plays it over and over every day.
I teach this stuff. I teach this stuff constantly, brother. You are alive and well out here in Oregon.
For sure.
Let's talk about one of the stories in the book here. And, folks, we're talking about the book, 12 Essential Insights for Emotional Sobriety. We're going to take a short break, and we're going to come back, and I want to talk about Philip. This is from Chapter 7, entitled Realizing That No One Is Coming. Folks, don't go away. More with our good friend, Dr. Alan Berger, author of 12 Essential Insights for Emotional Sobriety, when we return.
Moon river, wider than a mile, I'm crossing you in style someday.
This is Dr. Al Mooney, author of The Recovery Book, and you are listening to Take12Radio.com.
Wherever you're going, I'm going your way. Two drifters off to see the world.
Hey, greetings, recovery family. It's me, the Monty Man. Because of the generous folks at Podomatic, Take 12 Recovery Radio is now able to reach literally thousands of people seeking recovery from drug and alcohol addiction. Addiction is the #1 health crisis in our world today, and recovery from active addiction gets the least amount of attention due to stigma. Now, with the help of Podomatic, we are able to break that stigma and focus on the solution that is recovery more effectively than ever before. So, from all of us here at KHLT and the Take 12 Recovery Radio shows, we give a hearty thank you to the staff at Podomatic. To subscribe free to our podcast, visit us at www.take12recoveryradio.podomatic.com. recoveryradio.com. That's take the number 12 recoveryradio.podomatic.com. Thank you, Podomatic, and God bless you. To join the world's largest directory of independent podcasters, visit www.podomatic.com.
You know she can't smile without you. I can't. She can't smile without you.
I can't laugh and I can't sing. I'm finding it hard to do anything.
Hey guys, this is Richie Supa, and you are listening to Take12Radio.com, recovery talk and positive music.
If you only knew what I'm going through, I just can't
That's ventriloquist Darcy Lynn from America's Got Talent. Barry Manilow's song, I Can't Smile Without You, one of the most popular codependent songs in the world. I can't do this, I can't do that. I mean, if I don't have you around, I'm just a mess. I have no emotional sobriety whatsoever.
That's right.
And on the phone with us is our good friend and Take 12 Recovery Radio contributor, Dr. Alan Berger, PhD. We're talking about his book, 12 Essential Insights for Emotional Sobriety, Getting Your Recovery Unstuck. And in the book, in chapter 7, Realizing That No One Is Coming, there's a gentleman by the name of Philip, and I just want to read this short part here. It says, Philip's commitment to understanding himself and to healing his deep wounds caused by childhood traumas was inspiring. He went to AA meetings on a regular basis and attended 5 AA retreats every year. He spent time helping others and got regular guidance from his sponsor. He was proud to say he had worked through all the steps at least 4 times with his sponsor in the past 15 years of his recovery. But that's just the beginning with Philip. He had graduated from the Landmark Forum, a personal development program. He attended 4 of Tony Robbins' weekend workshops. For a time, he became a saved evangelical Christian. After that, he lived in a Christian commune for 5 years. Most recently, he had become a Buddhist. What stood out in the first meeting with Philip was that he didn't feel like he profited from the journey he had been on. He saw himself as a failure. He blamed himself. He concluded that there was something unfixable about him and his true nature. He was disillusioned and upset because all of his seeking and searching hadn't led him to the so-called promised land. And then it goes on to say, in our first session, Dr. Berger says, he made this point very clear. Quote, I would have hoped that I'd been further along in healing my pain than I am. I'm discouraged. What's going on with Philip, Dr. Berger?
Well, isn't that a sad, when you read it, I feel so much sadness for him. Here he had been on this journey. Sounds like Siddhartha a little bit, doesn't it? From
Yes.
Thurman Esse's book. He had been on this journey and, looking to deal with things. Now, what happens a lot of times is that we are changing, but we can't see it because of our expectations.
That's a powerful statement.
Well, we see it all the time. Somebody says, God, I just don't see anything changing. Now, he had been on this journey, and if I asked him, well, are you sober today? You know what he would have said? Yes.
Yeah.
I said, so whatever you've been doing, you haven't had to drink or use any other drugs to deal with the pain you've been in. That's no small accomplishment. You and I know that, Monty.
Yeah.
How many people try to get well and just struggle, man, and don't make it? I mean, so if somebody is still on the road to recovery, even though they're not feeling that peacefulness, that serenity that they long for, it doesn't mean that they're a failure. See, for Philip, his world was very, very much in absolutes. Either I'm completely well or I'm not well at all.
Wow.
And that's a very undifferentiated. Now go back to what we talked about. That's a very undifferentiated idea, isn't it?
Yes.
That there's no appreciation of the gradations of change. That I can be a little bit better today than I was yesterday, and that counts.
Dave, you were going to say something.
Well, as soon as you started reading that, it just popped into my head that it sounds like a lot of people, they're more focused on the destination rather than the journey.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Because I know for me, it wasn't until I focused on the journey, the day-to-day journey, and what I was going through, and how I was making changes. I was focus in on that. That didn't change.
Right.
Where before I was like, okay, well, there's a destination. I got to get to here. So what do I got to do to get there? Well, I got to read this book. I got to go to this class. I got to do this, and then okay, now I got my degree. But where's my experience?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. And see, you'll go back to what I said before. That's the I'm okay if mentality.
Right.
I'm okay if I experience this. And that can even happen on a daily basis. If I have an expectation about what today is supposed to be like, I've already set myself up not to have a good day.
Dave, you've had people sit in your office. I have in my office. And Derek, you've heard this too, that are so down on themselves that it doesn't matter how much you point out their accomplishments and how far they've come. They always go to the yeah, but thing. They always go, but this is so hard. Yeah, but I feel this way, or I feel that way. Dr. Berger, they're stuck, right?
Yeah, that's right. They are stuck. That's a good example of being stuck in our recovery. And you can't help somebody out of that until they can see what they're doing to themselves. See, that's the important thing. And one of the things that stands out when you're reading 12 Essential Insights, I think it's the second or third insight, it's that we have to start raising our self-awareness. We have to raise our awareness of what we're doing, how we create our existence, how we create our problems. Remember in the big book it says we come to realize that our problems are of our own making.
Yeah.
Well, that's far-reaching. Our problems are of our own making because of the way that we're in relationship to our wife, that way we're in relationship to ourselves, the way we're in relationship to the problems we're having, or the way we're in relationship to the people we love. That's what's causing our problems.
If everybody would just do things my way, everything would be fine.
Yeah,
oh my God, haven't we all said that? Right?
that great piece in the big book that talks about the actor and if everybody would just play their role. Yeah, and the thing that I point out with the guys a lot of times out at the center is, you think you're the director of the play. The problem is all the actors, they think they're the director. Right. And now we got a train wreck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. The actor who wants to be the director, right?
Yeah.
That just summarizes our plight wonderfully.
Yeah.
Right? We just don't know how to let go of that idea. Because we think that our well-being is dependent that everybody else does what we want them to do.
It's interesting to me that when I place expectations on you to behave a certain way in order for me to be comfortable in my own skin, even if you meet those expectations, I will raise the bar. Do you find that common?
That's right. That's right. That's so true. You're right on with that.
Yeah.
That's exactly what happens.
And we do that to ourselves too, don't we?
That's right. We definitely do that to ourselves.
Yeah. Dr. Berger, what is one of the main things that you hope people will absorb by reading this book, 12 Essential Insights for Emotional Sobriety?
Well, I hope what people are going to get in reading the book is, first of all, excited about the possibilities. Because that's the great thing about emotional sobriety, is that it opens up so many doors to our life. It opens up a whole new consciousness. So instead of taking things personally, as you said earlier on, if we don't take things personally, we can really start to get to know the other person. We can start to understand who they are and see what's going on with them, instead of thinking what they're doing is a reflection of how they feel about me. I mean, that's just one of things, is that now, instead of focusing on life being different, or people being different, or circumstances being different, we try to figure out, what do I need to do to learn how to cope with what's going on better? And so the level of taking responsibility, I call it, we end up taking responsibility in a radical way for our lives.
Yeah.
Is that we really see that we've got, and that's where the no one is coming comes from, is no one is coming, but I'm the one I've been waiting for.
Oh, wow. Wow.
You know, that's what we get to. I'm the one I've been waiting for, but I can't get there if I'm still looking at you to make things better for me.
Derek, you have any questions or comments for Dr. Berger while we're sitting here?
Well, I really appreciate in the beginning of our conversation, for me and my experience, now that I'm a little more learned, and I overemphasize a little, being able to identify really, or define rather, what emotional dependency is. For the majority of my adult life struggling with addiction and overcoming, I'm grateful that I'm sober, but not being able to recognize in the moment that this is a real struggle and how to define that. And I say that because when now I'm able to define what emotional dependency is, at the root, he suggested, it's really at the heart of it, a core, it's a control issue, right? And so
that's right.
For me, being able to identify that gives me hope in the sense that, okay, I'm in the context of something that's not convenient nor comfortable. I can be okay with me being sober-minded when I don't have to feel like I'm in control of the outcome. And for me, that's revolutionary. When I can be okay being uncomfortable, not governed by the desire to want to be in control, and relinquish that perception, then I'm okay with myself. And that gives me hope. And so I think that's where I'm at with a whole lot of this. It's something that I'm still learning. It's something that I have to intentionally be deliberate in the moment. But with God's help and grace, I'm getting better at this. And so I really value the reality of identifying at the core what the problem is. And it's a control issue. And I'm tremendously OCD. And so for me, that's a struggle.
Well, Dr. Berger, do you think that, why do you think we are so adamant about being in control? Is it fear-based?
Well, it's anxiety-based. See, with the anxiety we have is that if I don't control the situation, it's not going to go the way I want it to, and therefore I'm going to be uncomfortable. I mean, identifying the fact that we all hate being uncomfortable, and I think that's driven a lot of us into our addiction. What do we do if I'm uncomfortable? Let me pick up a drink and get rid of it.
Sure.
Let me get high. Then I don't have to feel it. I believe that addiction is really seeking an escape from our discomfort because we don't know how to deal with our feelings in a better way.
Yeah. Very well put. Absolutely.
So that's that anxiety that we have. My God, if this doesn't work out right, I won't be okay. See, then that drives us. You can call that fear. I call it anxiety because a lot of this, the difference between fear and anxiety is about what you imagine is going to happen. Fear is based on what is going to happen.
Yeah.
We don't know what is going to happen, but boy, if we go into our imagination, we can create all kinds of, scary outcomes for the future for ourselves.
Right. We were talking about the book 12 Essential Insights for Emotional Sobriety, Getting Your Recovery Unstuck by Alan Berger, PhD. Dr. Berger, where can folks pick this book up at?
Well, the best place to get it is on Amazon. If you order it through my website, you'll get a signed copy of it. But if you go through Amazon, if you're especially a Prime member, then shipping is free.
Yeah.
I love Prime membership. I get all kinds of stuff shipped over to my house because it's free. But Amazon's a really good place to pick it up. Look, the good news about this stuff, Monty, and I've been around for a while. This book and the book 12 Smart Things Now is really helping people discover a whole new dimension to the recovery. That's the thing I'm excited about. People write me all the time and say, my God, Dr. Berger, I can't tell you what these ideas have done to my recovery. They've opened up possibilities. I was getting bored with my recovery, and you have now, just brought some new thinking and new ideas into it for me. That's the exciting thing I find with this stuff, is that people can discover all kinds of new ways of looking at situations. Like, here's an example. I believe trouble doesn't mean something's wrong. Trouble means that something is right about
something's
our life.
right.
Because when you have trouble, it's an invitation to take a look at yourself and see where you need to grow up.
I love that. I love that.
Thing, right? If I look at life that way, when something comes down the pike that's challenging to me, I don't look at it as a problem. I look at it as that there's going to be an emerging opportunity for me to grow up.
But we don't feel that way in the moment, though, do we? When we're in the middle of it,
we may not feel it, but that's where faith comes in, Monty, and that's what I see emotional sobriety is a restoration of faith in our ability to grow and to become what in I think the way you'd say it, and I would agree with it, the way God wants us to be.
Yeah.
God moves us towards wholeness. There's no question about it. That we are, from a very early on, we're undifferentiated, and our whole life is moving towards differentiation. I think that life force is God-given. I can't explain it any other way, because it's a mystery.
Yeah.
And I think God is a mystery. And that force towards actualizing the tendency we have to actualize what is possible is incredibly powerful. You don't teach a child to walk. They want to.
Ooh, interesting.
You don't teach a child to walk. You don't teach a child to speak unless they have a neurological problem.
Right.
They're imitating the adults around them because they want to communicate.
Yeah.
See, they want to realize the potential that they have. Well, that's in you and me. Now, when it's attached to our false self, it creates all kinds of problems. But as soon as you become disillusioned with that false identification and now connect yourself to who you really are, watch out, baby.
Yeah.
Here we go.
So that brings up another issue that I'd like you to address: false self, true self. I firmly believe that, or what I refer to when I'm working with the guys is you've got to discover, or what you say, recover your true self, your authentic self, the self God created you to be, and you've lost that guy somewhere along the line. People have developed this false self, and what kind of damage does that do?
Yeah, well, all kinds. Look. When I dedicate my life to actualizing a concept of who I should be, instead of actualizing myself, I create all kinds of problems. I get disconnected from who I am. I try to be someone I'm not. That false self is completely dependent on other people because I developed it to get people to love me, to accept me, to give me a feeling that I belong. So it is totally based on a dependency model.
Right.
And so when I go through life on that, I mean, that's where, now let's attach it to the second half of the first step. That's where our unmanageability started. As soon as I started to try to manage life, I became unmanageable. Just like as soon as I tried to control my drinking, I became more and more powerless.
Right. Wow, what a conundrum.
It is, man, and it's a conundrum, and thank God there's a way out of it, right?
Man.
Yeah.
Thank goodness for that.
Why do you think so many people skip over the chapter in the big book, There Is a Solution?
Well, I think that people, once they start to feel better, and we see this all the time, if there's a hole in your roof, once it stops raining, you quit worrying about fixing the hole in your roof.
Yeah.
And I think people settle for less than is possible. Part of that is feeling unworthy of more. Part of that may be just, downright laziness, is we don't want to work hard around it. But the truth of it is that this program goes way beyond just feeling better. It really, you can be rocketed into what Bill calls the fourth dimension.
The fourth dimension, yeah.
That's what emotional sobriety does. It rockets you into that fourth dimension.
When is a person, in your experience, what are some of the earmarks that tells you that a person is ready to actually digest what you're trying to get across here?
Well, we used to think they had to have some time, but not so anymore. You know, you're doing it. You're introducing these ideas early on in people's recovery, and so am I.
Right.
And it's making a big difference in people staying clean and sober.
Amen.
So I believe as soon as you start this journey, starting to learn about this stuff is important. I believe what we're going to see, that this has been the missing link. And this is what Bill saw. He saw this could be the part of the next development in AA. I think people need these tools so they don't relapse. Because the dependency on others and that I'm okay if attitude causes so much problem in early recovery. And the way people respond to that is they go out and drink, or they use other drugs other than alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that the sooner the better. If you're around a long time, this stuff will have even deeper meaning to you.
Do you think practicing emotional sobriety can actually change the neural pathways in your DNA and your thinking?
We know it does. We know it does. But Dr. Siegel's work up at UCLA looked at patients in psychotherapy.
Mm-hmm.
And he saw that there were new pathways being developed. So we know that any kind of new experiences people have is you can change. And that's the thing that I've always believed. It's never too late. It's never too late.
And therefore, if that's the case, we can pass that on to our children, true?
That's right. And we see it happening all the time, don't we, Mom?
Yeah.
Is we say that the disease is contagious. Those around us get as sick, if not sicker than we are.
Right.
But the truth is once you transform it, then you start to transmit your recovery. And those around you also benefit. In fact, this was Bill's insight. In the 12 and 12, he says, if we practice these 12 principles in our daily affairs, he goes, that we and those about us begin to achieve emotional sobriety.
You know, I'm just, the only thing that I regret is that I didn't learn this stuff early in my recovery, in my journey. You know, when I first walked through the doors of my 12-step Wine About Your Day meeting, which the first meeting I went to was, it was amazing. It was welcoming. There was this old guy in there. He just, he patted me on the hand. He said, you're in the right place. The second meeting I went to, a guy was cussing me out and everything. And I always look back at that and I'm like, oh, I got to see both sides of this, so I'm not going to be surprised. So of course I went back to the meeting that was welcoming, right? But I never learned anything about this stuff. It was very surface. There was very little even talk about the steps. It was more about, just talking about your problems.
Yeah.
How can we improve in our 12-step fellowships, get back to the basics, get back to the step work, and get on this page of emotional sobriety?
Let me get out of here. Hold it. Sorry about that. Go ahead, bud.
Yeah, I was to say, how can we get back to the basics in our meetings, and get back to talking about the step work, talking about what's in the literature, and not so much our opinions and our feelings, and get on board with this emotional sobriety thing? Or are we going to be hitting a wall?
Well, that's a good thing. We could do a whole nother show on that one, couldn't we?
Yeah.
I mean, because this is where people can only pass on what they know and what they've been doing. And, even though it's become a lot more popular, I don't think we're at the tipping point yet for emotional sobriety to be mainstream. It's getting closer.
Yeah.
I mean, it's getting closer. Every Thursday night I have an emotional sobriety meeting. I get on a regular basis between 160 and 200 people attending. So it's amazing. It's starting to get a hold. My books have sold over 50,000 copies on emotional sobriety, and they're still growing.
Yeah.
I have that Unpacking Bill's Letter CD that I did. Somebody bootlegged it and put it on YouTube channel. And the guy finally reached out to me and asked my permission to do it. Of course, I gave it to him because it's not, to me, about making money. It's about sharing this information. And it's got over 100,000 people that have listened to it.
Yeah.
So
well, I popped that CD in my truck and listened to it probably 6 times just in the last month.
There's a lot of great information in it, and that Bill really, really, really was gifted, and really, I believe his insights were divinely inspired.
Folks, if you want to hear more from Dr. Alan Berger, I encourage you to visit his website at abphd.com, and it's also linked up at take12radio.com as well. There's podcasts on there. There's in
podcasts. And listen, the other thing I want to just mention, Monty, is that we've started an emotional sobriety study area.
Yeah.
Where all my talks, all my DVDs, and once a month they get to meet with me, and once a month with my good friend Herb Kagan, and it's $12.99 a month. If they go to 4D Publishing, you'll be able to see that. You can sign up for that, and there's just all kinds of great resources on there, and it's well worth the $13 a month.
And you and Herb do a great. You guys are a great team.
Yeah, we have a lot of fun together.
Yeah. So it's 4D Publishing. If they Google that, they'll find it.
That's right. They'll be able to find that.
Awesome. That's excellent. Folks, you can also you can listen to the entire workshop of Step by Step Toward Emotional Sobriety by going to our website at take12radio.com and clicking on the Recovery Workshops banner, and there you'll see a bunch of different workshops, including Dr. Berger's workshop on emotional sobriety. The book is 12 Essential Insights for Emotional Sobriety, Getting Your Recovery Unstuck. I just love that tagline, because I think so many of us, we get to a place and it's kind of like, now what? Yeah. And the now what begs the response so much more, because there really truly is, right?
Yep, that's right, man.
Yeah. Amazing stuff, brother.
Thanks for having me on the show, Monty. I love you.
I love you too, man, and we so appreciate it. Dave, any closing thoughts or questions for Dr. Berger?
I would just like to say thank you for your contribution to recovery. I just picked up the book. I haven't had a chance to read the entire thing yet, but one thing I know is some of my patients, they mentioned the emotional sobriety, or we were talking about it one time. And so what I'm going to do is I do classes every day for everybody. And one of the, I think I'm going to put it in like life skills group, is just a section on emotional sobriety and kind of go through that. So which leads me into my next question is like, what would be a good starting point to work with people, or what would I recommend somebody that wants to dive deeper into the topic?
I would start with Bill's letter.
Okay.
I would start with Bill's letter. I think that would be a good introduction to it, and then you've got all of my material that can support a discussion of it.
Yeah, absolutely. We have that CD. We unpack Bill's letter in the workshops on my page too, Dave. That I'll give you the link to.
And what was that?
4D Publishing?
No. The other one you said was on the Take 12 Radio, the step-by-step guide to emotional sobriety.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, step by step. You betcha.
Because that would be something I would probably. There's a couple people I have in mind that requested some more information.
Yes,
so.
Absolutely. And you can download those right off there too and make copies of it. Derek, any questions or last comments for Dr. Berger?
Yeah, not necessarily a question, but just a big hoorah and thank you for the information, the insight, and there's obviously no end to opportunity to apply what we're being taught, and so I'm looking forward to that. Thank you, Dr. Berger.
You're welcome very much.
All right. Well, Dr. Berger, I know you've got to go. God bless you. I will send you a text with my address about the other thing that we talked about before the show.
Sounds great, Monty.
And so we're going to close out. Dr. Berger, thank you. God bless you. Kevin Hirashi is the author of a song called Alan's Theme. And this was the music that we used as the intro and the outtake for Step by Step Toward Emotional Sobriety. And it is a beautiful piece. It's very calming. I think serenity and chirping birds and all that stuff when I listen to this. So we thought we would close out. It's an instrumental piece. We thought we'd close out this show with Alan's Theme. So here it is by Kevin Hirashi, Alan's Theme. Emotional sobriety is the key to complete recovery. It sets the stage for real maturity and fulfillment in our lives. It's like finding the key that opens the door to a better life, a happier life, a more fulfilling, realized existence. I want to thank my guest today, Dr. Alan Berger, a Take 12 Recovery radio contributor and dear friend of not only this program, myself, but of many of you. Thank you, Dr. Berger, for all you do for the recovery community and the world. Until our next broadcast, this is the Monty Man, and I am wishing God's perfect serenity for you.
This has been a broadcast of KHLT Recovery Broadcasting.
Kitty, 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 kitty.